Slater, Crusaders. America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. Happy Thursday. It's the best day of the week. Good news, I found the stupidest COVID regulation of them all. And there's a lot, but this one may be right up there. South Korea, no gyms are allowed to play music of any kind over 120 beats per minute. So it can't be too fast. You can play music, but don't play too fast, because that could cause people to work out too hard, breathe heavier, and spread more COVID. So every news article I've read about this always highlights Gangnam Style. And I'm like, what year is this? Why are we, this song came out in 2013. But you can't play Gangnam Style too fast. Too fast. You can work out, just not too hard, all right? Don't breathe too hard. We are not a very smart people. I want to preview tomorrow's special on COVID and kids. We need to know the facts. Next week, we are going to do a whole segment, maybe even two, on how to change someone's mind on this issue. And I have to give a brief apology. I should have done this already, and I apologize for not having done this already. We've just been spending so much time on understanding the why these different policies and et cetera are coming down, and why scientists are so wrong, and what are their motivations, and what's the human nature, all that. We've been spending so much time on the why. I haven't even thought about, we need to really talk about how to change someone's mind who believes these things. So we're gonna do that next week, but I'll just say here, shoving facts down their face doesn't change anyone's mind on anything, on masks, on vaccines, on school closures, nothing. You can't just shove facts in their face and have them bow down and be like, oh, thank you so much for the facts. Now I understand, I see the light. It's never worked, it never will. Now, that being said, we still need to know the facts. So let's talk about COVID and kids. I'm grateful to New York Magazine. You know the lab leak theory? At first, you could not talk about it. If you talked about it, you get kicked off social media. I think I read a poll that 2/3 of people now believe the lab leak theory of how COVID spread. And this is great news. So I want to credit left-leaning magazines for this. New York Magazine and Vanity Fair were the first two big magazines that wrote about the lab leak theory. So credit here where it is deserved, which is why it was so heartening to see that New York Times Magazine, with their latest headline that you just saw, the kids are all right. Why now is the time to rethink COVID safety protocols for children and for everyone else. So it's a wonderful article. It's on our website, mikeslater.locals.com. Please go read the whole thing. This is incredible information hopefully you need it. Hopefully you don't need it, but if you do need it, you have it to bring to your local school board. Bring to your state representatives, depending on where you live, to tell them to either open up schools or demask our kids. So 4 facts for us to remember. 4 facts. Again, mikeslater.locals.com. They're all up there. Fact number 1. Over the course of this pandemic, year and a half or so, 49,000 Americans under the age of 18 have died of all causes, of all reasons. This is according to the CDC. 49,000 Americans, 49,000 kids have died. Only 331 of those 49,000 have died from COVID. I would guess that number is even high because there's a died with COVID, died from COVID. There's that difference there, but let's go with it. 331 have died from COVID. That's less than half as many kids who have died from pneumonia in the last year and a half. You have half as many kids have died from COVID as have died from pneumonia. And then you also got to ask how many of those kids had some other pre-existing conditions, were cancer patients or something like that. Okay? In 2019, over 2,000 American kids died in car crashes. 1,000 died from drowning. And we're in just 200 have died from COVID, and I'm guessing it's even less than that when you talk about otherwise healthy kids. Fewer kids have died from COVID than heart disease, suicide, homicide. Come on. Quote number 2. New York Magazine, all told, 600,000 Americans have lost their lives to COVID over the course of the pandemic. Again, with COVID, from COVID, we'll go with it. Just 0.05% of those were under the age of 18. That is a population that represents more than 20% of the population as a whole. Does that make sense? So kids under 18 are 20% of the American population, but have made up 0.05% of the deaths from COVID. It would be one thing if, first of all, praise God that it's not, kids are 20% of the population, but 50% of the deaths. Could you imagine? But it's not even equal. It's not 20% of the population and 20% of the deaths, or 20% of the population and 10% of the deaths, or 5% of the deaths, or 1% of the deaths, or 0.5% of the deaths. It's 0.05% of the deaths. Kids are not affected by COVID. Now, this author's point is that you can make your own risk assessment with your family, of course. But anyone who's scared for their kids today, right, wrapping them up, masking them up, can't wait to vaccinate them, they probably weren't doing all that 2 years ago for the flu, certainly not in the summertime. No one was staying home entirely because they were fearful of the flu. And his other argument is that now that everyone's vaccinated who wants to be vaccinated, it's 90% of seniors are vaccinated. 90%. That's incredible. He said the country's entire risk profile has changed in just the last few months, but our risk tolerance and risk assessment hasn't. There's something called a mortality risk metric. This is a CDC metric, mortality risk metric. This is fact number 3. The mortality risk for those 85 years old and above is 610 times higher than for someone 18 to 29. So what does that mean? A mortality risk is 610 times higher for someone over the age of 85 than it is for an 18 to 29-year-old. Because here's what that means. He says the number's so large it's hard to process. That means if a given number of infections among 20-somethings would produce a single fatality, the same number of infections in 85-year-olds would kill 610 people. All right, so you need a certain number of cases in order for one 20-something-year-old to die. If you took that same number of cases in a population of 85 plus, 610 of them would die. This means that the variable that matters is age. It's age. And it's actually so neatly age-driven that your mortality risk doubles every 5 years. But it starts off at like nothing. So this brings us to fact number 4. If it's not about kids dying, if it's not about kids getting sick, it doesn't happen. They say it's about spreading it. Right? So we gotta keep kids from getting COVID so that they can't spread COVID to the most vulnerable population. Well, first of all, the most vulnerable population, the elderly, already vaccinated, so done, and problem solved. But even if that weren't the case, kids don't spread COVID in any meaningful way. These 2 studies were done before vaccines. Right? Fact number 4, 900,000, right? It's almost 1 million in-school students in North Carolina last fall, pre-vaccine. Research is expected based on local transmission rates, so based on the rate of spread and everything in the community, they would have expected 900 cases of COVID in the schools. There weren't. There were 23. Another study, 20,000 Nebraskans attending school all year, there were 2 cases. This was pre-vaccine. And the conclusion here is that kids don't spread COVID. Because that was the big concern, right? They don't get it. They don't get sick by it. They don't die from it. But maybe they spread it. No. Now listen. Someone's going to, oh, Slater, I know one kid who did. Yes, it can. It's possible. Right? Just like when I say kids don't die from COVID, you'd be like, oh, here's one who did. It's like, yes, it's possible. But we don't mask and vaccinate every kid because of this 0.0003% death probability, right? There's, back to vaccines, there's no state in the country that has vaccinated less than 76% of people over the age of 65. That's remarkable. So when you hear Biden and everyone talk about how we're not vaccinating enough, we need to vaccinate more people, the vaccine hesitant, all that stuff. No. People over the age of 65 who are the most vulnerable, there's not a single state in the country where less than 76% of those people are vaccinated. That alone is herd immunity. That's an amazing fact. In San Diego County, it's over 80% of everyone over the age of 12 is vaccinated. That's where I live in San Diego County. Over 80% of everyone over the age of 12. And you would think the 12 to 18 bracket, you wouldn't think that many kids would be vaccinated. So you think that the percentages would be much lower than that. But even when you factor in 12-year-olds, still the entire county, which is almost 4 million people. San Diego County is bigger than half the states, landmass-wise and population-wise. We're at over 80% of even everyone over the age of 12. And if you just take seniors, we're somewhere in the 90s who have been vaccinated. So, like, we're done. Everyone who needs to be vaccinated is vaccinated. Last point, long COVID. I hear this one all the time too. Oh, what about long COVID? All right, a study in England. They studied 1 million people. 3,000 people registered long COVID out of 1 million. Long COVID are lasting effects from COVID. Lasting effects. It's well under 1%. That's adults. Kids are going to be even less than that. So it's nothing to worry about. Last line from the New York Magazine article. In the UK, even the University of Edinburgh's Devi Sridhar, long the country's most vocal advocate for a no-tolerance, total suppression approach known as COVID-0. Even this person has lately been wondering, can we now live with the coronavirus? Yes. Yes is the answer. But the left here in America won't let it. As our governor in California, Newsom, has said, we need the disease to vanish before we loosen the restrictions completely. And in the meantime, we are going to continue to inflict cruel pain on our children. We're going to talk more about that on tomorrow's special. We'll give you some even more numbers, but I think that's enough for right now. So why is this even a thing? Let's take a couple minutes here and talk about why. So you're saying, okay, Slater, you just went over all these reasons why kids aren't dying from COVID, kids aren't getting sick from COVID, there's no lasting effects from COVID, kids aren't spreading COVID. Okay, these are all scientifically backed. This is all reason, right? So why? Why did we shut down schools? And only we did, by the way. England, they're crazy about this COVID stuff. They're still on lockdowns. Schools were the last thing to be shut down and the first things to open up. My brother lives over there. They did shut down schools a little bit, but it was the last thing that they ever shut down. Here in America, it's the first thing to shut down and the last thing to open. So why are they doing that? The disconnect there, it's hard for us to fathom. And I'll tell you exactly why. The reason why we have inflicted and continue to inflict in many places this pain on our kids is because of the teachers union. Never again think of the teachers union as a force for good. Never again. And never again think of them, even for a second, that the teachers union cares about your kids. They don't. And this is so hard for people to wrap their head around because everyone's been so brainwashed into thinking that the teachers union are a force for good and that the teachers union are the teachers. And teachers are heroes. And teachers are amazing. And teachers aren't paid enough. They're the real victims. So I can't say anything critical of the teachers union because I love teachers. Snap out of it. The teachers union are awful, wicked people who have zero interest in your children's welfare. They would throw your kids to the wolves before they lose their union dues. And I can prove their evilness, their vileness, in how they deal with child molesters in your kids' school. Teachers, these predators, will sexually abuse and molest and rape your children. And the teachers union protects them. Okay? I don't know what else you need to, oh, Slater, that's a little harsh. You're saying some pretty mean things about the teachers union. Yeah, see, people who say that, you're still falling for it. You still think the teachers union are teachers. That's not what that is. Yeah, teachers, great. They help our kids. The kids of the future, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. I'm not talking about the teachers. I'm talking about the teachers union. They are vile, despicable, evil, horrible, wicked people. The teachers union in LA, this was back in 2013. I'll never forget this. There was a teacher there. This is the trigger warning for this story. There was a teacher, a kindergarten teacher in LA, who forced his kindergartners to drink his bodily fluids blindfolded. He would put it on cookies. He would have them drink it out of a cup. He would have them drink it out of spoons. He was protected by the teachers union to the point where the school district had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay him off and pay off the union to get him fired. And then he went to jail. That's an extreme example, but it goes all the way down. And I'm not even kidding. I was looking for that headline that we just played right there. And I Googled teacher bodily fluid, and all these stories popped up of despicable, evil people like that in our schools across the country. All of them protected by the teachers union. And I know someone's gonna say, oh, well, Slater, it's important because I'm a teacher, my husband's a teacher, and he got falsely accused of something, and the teachers union protects the teacher. Yeah. Not what I'm talking about, okay? We're talking about the worst of the worst. The union protecting people who should be thrown in jail immediately. And they are protected over the welfare of your kids. Do you remember this video that was done by Project Veritas years ago? I got a bunch of these, but just to refresh your memory here. This is a person who goes undercover to the union office. And I think this person's story was she hit a student. All right, so this is a teacher. She hit a student, and she doesn't want to get in trouble for it. And she's afraid that the student is going to tell on her, and she's going to get fired, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's all upset. So she goes to the teachers union president. This is in New Jersey, and here's what the president says.
This file right here is from a teacher who had sex with a student. Okay? They're not going to jail. You know what this whole file is about? It's about whether or not they get to keep their pension.
Okay.
Sex with a teenage girl.
Oh, yeah.
Is he going to jail?
Okay, you with me? You can Google Project Veritas Teachers Union, and a bunch of those videos come up. One of the teachers union president, there's a banner behind him, and it says something like, teachers and parents together for the children, as they're defending child molesters. So you got to get it into your brain that the teachers union will do anything for their own interests, which means throwing your kid under the bus. Months ago, the LA Teachers Union, Los Angeles Teachers Union, sent out a list of demands to the state in order to reopen school. And it was all Medicare for all, divest from Israel, defund the police, global warming, end charter schools. There's just this massive list of every progressive cause that had nothing to do with education. Right? It was like Medicare for all, and had nothing to do with COVID. And they said, do these things, and then we'll come back to work. Then we'll educate your kids. Then we'll start to care about kids. And they keep making these COVID demands more and more onerous, right? They keep moving the goalposts. They said, first they said, we're not going back to school until we get a vaccine. Okay, great, here's a vaccine. We're not gonna go back until teachers get all vaccinated. Okay, well, now you're all vaccinated. Well, now we're not gonna go back until all the kids are vaccinated. They keep moving the goalposts because right now they're engaged in the ultimate strike. The teachers are on strike, the teachers union's on strike. Parents want their kids back in school, they want their kids unmasked. A lot of teachers union finally caved on the going back thing, but they're gonna make your kid's life as miserable as possible so that you complain to the state. The state goes to the union and says, can we please unmask kids now? And the union says, okay, just give us more money. We want all this money. Give us the money and then we'll allow you to unmask kids. That's what it is. LA Unified's budget almost doubled from 2 years ago. In 2 years, it almost doubled. And almost all those new hires were for school psychologists, social workers, and janitors. Just union members. It's all about the teachers union. There's no scientific necessity for masks in any way whatsoever. The CDC didn't even cite a study about kids and masks. They didn't even try because there's nothing that exists. It's entirely a union mandate so that they can make your kids' existence miserable in school, make you upset, go to the state goes to the teachers union, caves, gives them all their demands. That's their play. And your kids are the pawns. And it's hard for people to understand because people do not understand the depths of the teachers union depravity and what they've done to your kids for the last year and a half and what they will continue to do until you stop them. Our special tomorrow is about kids and COVID. Look forward to it. Talking about depravity, got another story that you won't believe about that coming up next. Spread the word. Maybe I sounded a little vaccine hesitant in that last segment. Sorry, Fauci. I believe I ended the last segment with some line, something like, it's hard to understand the depths of their depravity or something like that. Continuing on that theme, and also the slippery slope is real, which is one of our mantras here. The slippery slope is real. Never accept this argument. Oh, that's the slippery slope fallacy. No, it's a real thing. Who would have ever thought we would have drag queen story hour? Like, wait, what is that? And wait until you hear what they're doing now. You thought it was going to end there? Oh, how cute. You thought it was going to end at drag queen story hour. I got an email the other day from a listener of the radio show informing me that drag queen story hour is back at a San Diego library. It's back, which is great. COVID's over. If we're back to having the absolutely essential drag queen story hours now back in business. Now, it gets worse, as it always does and always will. We're not even close to the bottom. I don't know if you've ever had an addict in your life, or you've been, and you're always like, oh, like this must be rock bottom. I'm sure this is their rock bottom. They're not even close to rock bottom. In America, we're like, oh, this is as low as we. No, not even close. So here's just the next step. The Labour Party in a town in England. So Labour Party is essentially their Democratic Party. Right? So they're Democrats, commissioned a group that makes furry costumes. Guys, do not put this picture up yet. That one's fine. Don't put the one up that we're going to put up. They make furry costumes to perform for kids at a library because we need to promote literacy, and there's just no other way to do it. And one of these fine gentlemen came dressed up, and a kid's warning here, if there's any kids listening, they came dressed up as a rainbow monkey with his nipples exposed, a giant fake butt with his anus exposed, and of course, no costume is complete without a giant dildo hanging between his legs. Now you're saying, Slater, there's no way that happened. How dare you make that up? How dare you besmirch the drag queen story hour community or something? You ready? There it is. Blurt it out. So that's fine. Here's him running out of a grocery store, bending over and showing himself to passerbyers. That's nice. That's nice. So I don't have any videos of him performing in front of kids. So when I first saw these, I was like, well, no, there's no way. There's no way. But here's a video of the three characters running out of the library. Do we have sound on this, guys? Go play the whole thing.
Hello, everybody. It's Mama G here. I hope you are having an absolutely gorgeous Monday. I am
That's all.
very excited to be here.
That's all I can take. Got it.
And
Cut that. That's horrific. But you saw him running out, flopping his business all over the place. That was the library. And the tweet said, did you see these characters causing mischief? Get ready, George Lane and South Woodford Library. We're coming for you next. Hashtag Summer Reading Challenge. With his, you know what, all over. So they were promoting this. They were like, hey, check it out. Here, come on, kids. Before they spread that video, people started to be outraged, and then indeed the library had to apologize. And that's finally when I was like, oh, yeah, that really happened. So we got to go. We got a lot of great guests coming up next. These are just perverts. These are perverts who are getting access to your kids. They're grooming your kids at a younger and younger age. This may be one of the worst things about our schools is the sexualizing of kids. It's true of pop culture, of course, as well, but maybe you heard about this elite private school in New York City. They had a porn literacy event. Porn literacy. So this will obviously trickle down to all public schools because, of course it will, because you got to be critical of everything, right? It's critical blank theory, right? Critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical whatever theory. Critical just means you got to just tear everything down. And then you replace whatever you've torn down with perversions of that truth and goodness. Get your kids out of public school. One of the most important aspects of woke culture is to dismantle the innocence of children. This is from James Lindsay. He says, the belief is that the innocence we encourage in children is part of the systems of power that enforce heteronormativity and cisnormativity and thus lead to oppression of gay and potentially trans kids. So the idea is, here's how it goes. We straight people we have this innocence of children. We want to shield these sexually perverse things from our kids, and we have this innocence of children. But these woke people, critical race people, what they say is, oh, no, what you're doing is you're shielding them from their true identity potential. So what we need to do is we need to queer these spaces. That's what they call it. We need to sexualize and queer these spaces at as young as possible, right? The kids as young as possible, so that they can be aware of different potentialities beyond your straight, non-trans identities. So you're the patriarchy, and you're oppressing children by keeping them away from these other gay things. That's their argument. That's what Drag Queen Story Hour is. There's also another element of, kids are wiser and more pure than adults. So we need to corrupt them and expose them so that they can be of an even higher wisdom. They already are, but we need to make them even higher wisdom than adults. Right? So it's ridiculous. Right? But this is why, we've talked about this before too. This is why they're celebrating lately more queer characters in cartoons. Kids' cartoons. There's no such thing as childhood to these perverts. And so many parents willingly hand their kids over to these people, including in our public schools. Get your kids out of government schools now. I met someone the other day. I actually called them up. I called up a business, and they said, hey, is this Mike Slater? I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, hey, I listen to your show every day. I took my kid out of public school because of you. It's beautiful. It's the nicest compliment anyone's ever given me. Can't wait to hear more of that. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Study Crusaders, we've talked a lot about the teachers union today. I'd say we've said some strong things, all true. Here is the head of one of the biggest teachers union lying to you.
Critical race theory is not taught in elementary schools or middle schools or high schools. It's a method of examination taught in law school and in college that helps analyze whether systemic racism exists, and in particular, whether it has an effect on law and public policy. But culture warriors are labeling any discussion of race, racism, or discrimination as CRT to try to make it toxic. They are bullying teachers and trying to stop us from teaching students accurate history.
Yeah, what a liar. Now, just the latest on her, this person that we're supposed to trust. Ron DeSantis in Florida is selling koozies that say, "Don't Fauci my Florida." And she wrote, disgusting. Millions of Floridians are going to die for Ron DeSantis' ignorance. He doesn't care about Floridians. He cares about furthering his own cruel agenda. So far from COVID, 38,000 Floridians have died. And she says, millions are going to die, and this is the woman we're supposed to trust. Our friend Autry Pruitt is here. He's the head of New Journey PAC. Mr. Pruitt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. I'm doing great. I'm glad to be on
Good to talk to you.
board. I hadn't seen that clip. I didn't know I had not seen that. I am stunned because I read the books. I've read the material. You can look on Twitter and see the lesson plans and the assignment. It's not even, did someone write it and she's just reading it, or is she just purposely lying? I don't know.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago, her union tweeted out, hey, here's our secretary, whatever, on Good Morning America talking about the importance of critical race theory in our schools. It was 3 weeks ago. And now she's saying they don't teach it in our schools. So the question is, like, we know she's lying. She knows she's lying. So why, Autry, why did she say that? Why did she lie?
Because the pressure is on. Because now what's happening, I think this is what's happening. The left side is starting to maneuver now and starting to come over. The moderate left, parents who necessarily aren't Trump supporters, they're probably not Bushies, they're not really Republicans, they're socially progressive. And they're like, wait a second, you're telling my kid because they have light pigmentation that they're evil, bigoted, prejudiced, and always has been, their parents are and their grandparents are. So that's what's happening now. They felt the heat from the conservative side, but now they're starting to feel the heat, the real heat from the Democrat side.
But they're still going to do it, though, right? They're still teaching it. They're not going to stop teaching it. They're saying they're not.
No, because now you have, not only do you have governors coming in, and that's the key. Governors are coming in and issuing edicts, or state legislatures are passing it. But now what's happening is school board elections are being turned over. And what these teachers unions are concerned about is not even really CRT. What they're concerned about is if you start getting free-thinking parents on these school boards who are not pro-union and who are not married to union dogma, then it's going to put the union's contracts in jeopardy. It's going to put the union's policy in jeopardy. So they're concerned about the school board elections having further impact than CRT.
You're so right. School board elections may be the most important battleground in America. We just need more moms on those school boards as opposed to these union goons. How long is this clip, guys? I don't want to play a long time of the Biden clip. Can we just play the beginning of it? That's okay.
This
Play
year
that.
alone, 17 states have enacted, not just proposed, but enacted 28 new laws to make it harder for Americans to vote. Not to mention, and catch this, nearly 400 additional bills Republican members of the state legislatures are trying to pass. The 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting. And we're going to challenge it vigorously.
I think people need to be reminded about what Jim Crow was. What were Jim Crow laws? What was Jim Crow back in the day?
Jim Crow, real Jim Crow, were poll tests, literacy tests, and other mechanisms specifically prevented those who are Black from voting. It wasn't requirement for IDs. It was not requirements to show you live where you say you live. It was requirements to say, hey, can you read these sets of words on a page? The Constitution doesn't require you have to be able to read to vote, and neither does the state constitution. That's what old Jim Crow was. Second part of Jim Crow were actually laws that would say you have to go vote through these tiny little doors in the back, and there's only one polling station, and we vote one at a time, and it's got to be verified and checked. And so you would just one by one to slow down the Black vote. That was old Jim Crow with related to voting.
I remember the opening scene of the movie Selma, and Oprah is playing a character, and she goes to the county to register to vote, and the guy says, he gives her a literacy test or a quiz and says, how many county judges are there? And she said 68. And then the guy goes, name them. And she couldn't, and he's denied, right? that's not what's happening here when Texas says you just need to give us your social security number, right?
It's definitely not what's happening here. And the proof is no matter what polls you take, somewhere between 70 and 80% of all Americans, Black Americans, Jews, Asians, whomever, all say, yeah, you should have an ID to vote. This is very, very simple. But not only that, as you probably remember, the laws that were passed in Georgia that they went ape crazy about, I don't want to, you might have children watching, they went ape crap about, were actually not as severe as laws in Delaware, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, or Connecticut. That's what's amazing.
It's my favorite part of that story, my absolute favorite part. Autry, you're a Black man. Do you have an ID? Do you know how to get one? Were you able? Did you need help from a white friend to help you get an ID? How did you know how to do it? Apparently it's so difficult for Black people to get IDs.
No, listen, I needed ID because I lived in Michigan, and so you couldn't drink till you're 21, but you need to get that ID to get your butt up to Canada. Because I'm so old, I grew up when you could just show an ID and go across the border. You need a passport, nothing. You just say, for those of us in the North. And so the thing where I lived in Michigan, the thing to do when you turned 18 was, because we lived maybe 3 hours, I think, from Windsor, from the Canadian border, maybe 4 or 5, I forgot. The thing to do was to get your ID and go across so you can, go to the casinos and so you can have a drink.
Yep.
So
you can even figure it out.
Yeah, I went to work.
I think it's one of the most insulting talking points of the left is that, well, Black people can't figure it out, or they're too poor to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, it's not only is it insulting, it's insulting that it's insulting. Let me explain. It's insulting that they don't realize that we have the brain power to understand they're insulting us. That's how bad it is.
It's crazy. Autry Pruitt, awesome to talk to you, man. New Journey Pack. Go check it out, the New Journey Pack, Autry Pruitt. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a great day, man. Our other friend, John Phillips, coming up next from KABC in LA. We'll talk about a little bit about the governor's race as well, but also a little bit about what Autry just said there about how the Democrats may be thinking this woke stuff's not such a good idea as some moderate Democrats are leaving the party. Talk about that coming up next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Senator Crusaders, Autry Pruitt just alluded to this a moment ago, that perhaps, at least in the case of our schools, perhaps the far left has gone too far and is losing a bunch of Democrats, and will they temper their ways a little bit? I mean, no, this wasn't in California. Where was it? Yeah, it was up in San Francisco, of course. Their school district that's teaching critical race theory for preschool. Preschool, sure, why not? One of our friends, John Phillips, host of KABC in LA, and also a writer at the Orange County Register here. What's going on, John?
Hey, how are you?
Good, brother. Is there is the far left tempering themselves a little bit because people are starting to wake up, or no?
No, they're indulging themselves more now than ever before. In fact, a good friend of mine's a flight attendant, and he was on one of these planes where they had a phony service animal. And he walks up to the service animal and he goes, "Oh, what's his name?" And the passenger snaps back at him and goes, "Their preferred pronoun is they, them." And he laughed. And the laugh never came. That was just how they react when you ask what the dog's name is. And there's a small segment of society that really believes in wokeism, and they believe it to their core. And they're very loud. They're all over Twitter and social media, and the Democratic Party listens to them, pays attention to them, and gives them what they want.
Why?
I don't know why. Jim Carville, of all people, just came out and said that they are losing electorally, including, by the way, if you go back to the last election, they lost seats in the Congress when they won the presidential election. And when they did their postmortem, they blamed it essentially on wokeism. They blamed it on the police, the riots that happened over the summer, and they shouldn't have stood idly by when all of that was happening. They should have spoken out against it, but they don't have the backbone to do it. They don't have the Constitution. They don't want to be the next Bill Maher, where the left eats their own because they're not pure enough.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I remember there was like a conference call with all the Democrats after the election, and some of the more moderate Democrats were like, guys, you're killing us here. And then, AOCs and whatever called them all racist for daring to suggest we shouldn't defund the cops. It's right. Wow. Okay, so what's their next move? What do you think they're going to do politically with all this stuff? Because you're right, it's getting crazier every day, and I don't hear any of them speaking out. Well, I'll give you one example. The voter ID law, though, right? Now, a lot of these Democrats are coming out and saying, oh, no, we were never against voter IDs. We think voter IDs are great. It's like, are you kidding me? So are they learning some things?
Well, they're trying to rewrite history, but they're boxed into a corner because you just had Rashida Tlaib, the congresswoman from Michigan, come out and say that we should not only defund the police, we should defund the Border Patrol and other law enforcement agencies, too. And the reason that they're boxed into a corner is they've essentially, with Republicans, deemed that any criticism of people like Rashida Tlaib, AOC, fill in the blank, comes from a place of racism. Well, if they are beyond criticism, then they can't be criticized within their own caucus without being called racist or sexist or Islamophobic too. So they're put in an awful place because they can't criticize these people. They can't come out and call them nuts. So they either just have to say, well, that's not exactly what I believe, which gets drowned out because the loudest voices in the room are always the more extreme ones. And they're going to have to deal with people branding the Democratic Party as being nuts.
Yep, totally right. I want to switch over to the California recall election of Gavin Newsom. September 14th, so just under 2 months, is the big election. I remember we talked months ago about this, and you were very excited, and you got me excited because the circus is coming to town, and it's going to be great because every Real Housewife of Orange County is going to run. And I was so excited, but now it's like, no, like where's the big crazy? Caitlyn Jenner's the best we got, John. Is it as circusy as you were hoping?
Okay, let me walk you back from the ledge here. Last time around, we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, who captivated the imagination of the electorate. And that was part of the reason that the entire world paid attention to the California recall. It's part of the reason that it was successful, and it's part of the reason that he won the election. We saw essentially the same thing happen in 2016 with President Donald Trump when he got in that Republican primary and just blew everyone away. This time around, it's a little different. We don't have a superhero on the ballot like we did last time. We have a lot of different candidates pitching their plans for California. Now, this could be uniquely a threat to Gavin Newsom because there's no one individual for him to run against. He can't say it's me or this Republican, or it's me and this ideology, or it's me and this political party. So what's going to happen is this election is going to be a referendum on Gavin Newsom and his performance, which is why he's now traveling up and down the state saying California is roaring back. I fixed our economy. I fixed homelessness. I've cleaned up the state. I fixed crime. Everything here is fantastic. Everything here is hunky-dory. Well, if you live in California, you just have to travel around and open up your eyes to know that's not true. He's in a very dangerous place. The easiest way for him to win this election is to make it blue-red RD conservative liberal. In a Democratic state, that will be enough for him to win the election. But now that the election is turning into a referendum on his performance, that puts him in a very, very dangerous place.
Yeah, okay. All right. You got me a little more excited. So now it's Gavin Newsom versus Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom can lose that race. And then really, who cares who wins from the Republican side after that? At least it's not Gavin Newsom. John, I think we got to go. Let's talk again very soon because that wasn't nearly long enough. Grateful for you, man.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you. KABC, listen to John there, and the Orange County Register as well. All right, a special tomorrow is COVID and kids. Please don't miss it. Lots of information on how to convince your school board to open up or at least take masks off kiddos. Spread the word.